So lately, I have been talking a lot about feelings because it's actually a really important topic to think about. I believe that at some point, everyone needs to come to terms with where they are right now. We need to come to terms with how these times are affecting us. Now, of course, I'm talking about the pandemic and how so many things got turned upside down for people. And this has affected everyone in some way or another. But on top of all of that, there is this death of George Floyd and others like him, even in the recent past. And now there are protests and even riots on top of everything else with the looters and the vandalism and the violence. There are lots of feelings have been stirred up inside of us. Obviously, you can tell that lots of feelings have been stirred up inside of me about this very thing. And in so many ways, people have been pushed to the limits of what they can handle. Now, as a disciple of Jesus, we must take a look at how our faith and hope are guiding us through all of this. We need to look at how we are reacting to these times. And we need to ask ourselves, what do these thoughts and these actions tell us about our faith and hope? What do they tell us about where we really are on our journeys? Now, regardless of where we might be, in so many ways right now, it feels like we are struggling to climb our way out of these chaotic times. It's like we so desperately want to get back to our former times of certainty and stability. Because that's what they seem like, right? But here's the problem with that. They only feel like times of certainty or stability because we are comparing them to our current times. If we have learned anything through these trials, it's that those times of certainty and stability were really nothing more than a mirage, because things can change literally one moment to the next. So how are we to navigate our way through these trials, or really any trials we go through? I think the answer is we navigate them in the same way we navigate through life outside of a pandemic. In fact, I know that being a disciple of Jesus prepares you to face just about anything. Just look at what his faith and hope helped him endure. And I say all this because being a disciple of Jesus is all about becoming more and more like him. See, being a disciple of Jesus is all about transformation. And in fact, if you are a disciple of Jesus, you are engaging in the process of transformation. It's a huge part of what this journey is about, but it's such a huge part that so many people have missed. See, when we follow Jesus, we are following him out of a broken condition into whole conditions, out of worn, beaten down conditions into restored conditions. Romans 5, 1 through 4, the text we've been talking about. We talked about this last week. It all starts with our faith and hope, the confidence and the anticipation that we have in God. And our faith and hope gives us endurance to navigate various trials, this life. Now, it doesn't mean we won't struggle at times. Our faith and hope will be tested, but enduring through these processes helps to develop godly character, the character of Jesus. It's called holiness, right? This godly character, these holy conditions that we want permeating our lives are what we refer to as the fruit of the Spirit. These are the conditions we want our hearts to be in no matter the circumstances. Whether we're locked down in a pandemic, in a P-row on the bayou, or on a dirt train to downtown Dallas, or in the middle of a protest. We want to be defined by love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And yes, these do come with what we might call positive feelings. And as we progress on our journeys, we will experience these positive feelings more and more as these conditions begin to permeate our hearts. But you see, it's the fruit of the Spirit that we're striving for, not the feelings. So, how does all this work? Again, it all begins with our faith and hope in God and cultivating that relationship. See, it's as we cultivate that relationship, we're cultivating these conditions of love and joy and peace. and we receive those things from God, and we learn how to dwell in them, and then we bring them to others around us where they too experience that love, that joy, that peace, etc. They experience it through us. So, for example, our faith and hope in God are a direct result of the love that God has demonstrated to us. John 3:16, God loved the world in this way, that he gave his only Son. And we see it demonstrated through Jesus, who stands for love in a way that no one else has, in a way that no one else does, and he pays the price for it. Romans 5:6, while we were still helpless at the right time, Christ died for the ungodly. And in fact, his love is the standard of love, and all other loves are measured by it. 1 John 4:7, love is from God. 1 John 4:19, he first loved us. 1 John 3:16, we know love by this, that he laid down his life for us. So you see, Jesus reveals to the world God's love for the world. And when we receive or accept that love, it awakens in us love. 1 John 4:19, we love because he first loved us. And then we extend that love to others by loving our neighbor as ourself. So John said it this way in 1 John 4:12, that when God abides in us, we love one another, and his love is perfected in us. See, that's the cultivating of that relationship and the things that are cultivated in our hearts as a result of that relationship. And then just as God has our best interests at heart, we begin to in turn do the same for others. Now, this may sound like an overgeneralization of things, and maybe it is. So let's just zoom in a little closer, because you know that things don't always quite work that easy or as easy as it sounds. Because we still, even though we're trying to cultivate this relationship with God, we still are like those in 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 1, who need to put away all evil behavior and deceit and hypocrisy and jealousy and unkind speech. We may find ourselves in situations where we are overcome by the feelings that oftentimes lead us to evil behavior, deceit, hypocrisy, etc. You see, it's in these moments that we can practice the putting away and instead extend love and joy and peace, etc. in those moments. And sure, this may take lots of effort and learning on our part, but the result is the endurance and the godly character that Paul talked about in Romans 5. But now, let's just zoom in a little further for maybe just a little more clarity. Because it's during these processes, we need to come to terms with what our feelings are. See, we may need to deal with some deep negative feelings that we have towards others. These conditions can have an effect on how we react to people just in general. We need to address any underlying conditions, any baggage that weighs us down. It's what the Hebrew writer was talking about when they were talking about every weight and sin that so easily entangles us. And sometimes there are deep wounds from past relationships and situations that we have just not properly dealt with. And sometimes just simply acknowledging, confessing, talking about these things helps us to actually face them and be able to move forward. Now, other times, it may take some efforts and restitution, seeking forgiveness, even just seeking counseling to help us deal with these wounds. Simply put, sometimes we just simply have to be intentional about dealing with the wounds in whatever manner is necessary. So, you see, as disciples of Jesus, we are dealing with the ideas and images that fill our minds, irregardless of the circumstances. We are addressing our past experiences, the things that have formed our hearts. We take our thoughts and we line them up and compare them to what Jesus says. We bring into question our ideas and we line them up with the mind of Christ. We are saying that we want to leave those harmful conditions behind for a holy condition, a godly character, like Jesus. It's what Paul was talking about in Romans chapter 12 and verse 2. This is what a disciple of Jesus does. And this is how a disciple of Jesus navigates pandemics, trials. This is how a disciple of Jesus navigates this life.